Good. Okay. I want to talk about Attack on Titan. I tried to shoot this video this past Saturday. But before I could finish it, Toonami came back from the commercial break, so I had to stop the recording. And you can't cut videos together on YouTube on mobile, so I'm just doing it. Excuse me. On the computer now as a live stream, just so I can use this microphone because I feel like that might be nice. I've tested it a bit. I want to talk about Attack on Titan because I just finished volume 22, chapter 90, which is the last of the volumes that I own digitally or physically. As I actually have the Colossal Edition #1 right here. It's a heavy bastard. I have the other 3 there, and then I own a couple volumes. I own volumes 21, 22 digitally from the Humble Bundle. And I finished those, so that's all the Attack on Titan I have. If I wanted to read more, I'd have to read it illegally. I don't really want to do that. So I'd buy them as ebooks, or I would wait for a Colossal Edition 5, which is probably what I'm going to do. Because the series is ending, probably not going to catch up by the time it ends. I could if I wanted, but so that's where I am. And chapter 90 is an important chapter. And I wanted to talk about a few things about this series because I've had it on my mind a lot lately, not just because it's good, but also because of some controversial stuff, which I'll get into. So whenever I talk about Attack on Titan, the thing that I always say is that I think why I like it so much is because it reminds me of a Western serial sort of mystery drama show like Lost, which I was a big fan of when I was younger. And I always wished that I could articulate this point better. And I still can't really do it. I think that monthly manga tend to have pacing that appeals more to me, tend to have pacing that is like more quote unquote like filmic, you could say. Monthly manga tend to feel like modern TV shows, and I guess those TV shows, they don't necessarily have to be Western. But just when you read a weekly manga, the pacing is often not you can't really sink into it because you get 18 pages a week. I think that's probably what a lot of it is. I think even if the way the panels are laid out, the way the quote unquote atmosphere is built might not be too different, which I still think maybe it is a little different. I think perhaps a lot of what's appealing to me about a monthly manga is just the fact that with each chapter, and chapters are important, there's people who kind of consider these things as a whole, which is often, I think, how they're thought of by the author in some way, but I think especially in a monthly manga, the chapter itself is important. And each chapter has a beginning, middle, end, which isn't really so much how it sometimes is in weekly manga. So I think the fact that you can sort of really get into a single chapter and enjoy it is something that's appealing to me about monthly manga. And just the fact that the form of storytelling that it allows is just often just very cohesive and cool. I mean, Full Metal Alchemist, that's really a story that goes from beginning to end. There's not really arcs in Full Metal Alchemist too much. People have divided it up, but there aren't. So that's something that I always think about when I think about Attack on Titan, and that's continued up until now. It's just when I say pacing, I also mean the pace at which things are revealed. One of the main reasons Attack on Titan reminds me so much of Lost is because it's always revealing mysteries and then revealing more questions out of those reveals, which is something that Lost did all the time. And I'm telling you, Attack on Titan answers many more questions than Lost. Attack on Titan has been very just sort of just good at sort of tying things up sometimes in a way that's almost too much. I mean, I know, and I know other fans kind of think this, that there are some things that will happen in Attack on Titan. You go, does that really need to be explained? I'm going to start getting into some spoiler stuff now. So if you're not caught up to at least chapter 90, don't watch any further. And if you are past chapter 90, please don't comment with any spoilers. I'm really enjoying this manga. I don't know much about what happens after this, so I really want to come in fresh. There was a moment in season 3 of the anime, which was a few volumes ago, from where I am in the manga, where they talk about the Keith Shadis, I think, the instructor, and how when Aaron's gear, his maneuver gear, malfunctioned during training, that was he actually sabotaged that intentionally, which is just a weird reveal. It's like, do we need to know that? And there's other stuff like that. In the second half of season 3, and like I said, I can say it because they're spoilers. There's the explanation of how Marco died, which there's a whole story behind that we didn't know, and that's good. And then coming up in volume 22, there is this whole thing, which is this amazing thing about the Smiling Titan, the Lady Titan that killed Aaron's mother. Where first you find out that this Lady Titan was Aaron's father's first wife from way back in the other country that they come from, the other continent. And when I saw this, I was like, "What is why? Like, is this just kind of like this is kind of weird? This doesn't make much sense. Seems like another kind of sort of like a J.K. Rowling moment, similar to the Keith Shadis thing of going back and saying, "Oh, let me explain this thing. It didn't need to be explained." I did not have enough faith in Isayama. I thought he did it maybe just because something about, it's important now. You can see it's sort of she said that she would find her husband again somehow, and she kind of did, but in a very dark way, and she ended up eating his second wife. But I did not have faith. And I think in the chapter after that, maybe 2 chapters later, that reveal actually becomes very important because it turns out that Aaron could only use his Titan control power, which is sort of his like the closest equivalent to like a Super Saiyan power up that he sort of got in the series. He could only use it when he did because he had punched the hand of the Smiling Titan. Since the Smiling Titan was made from Dina, who had royal blood, Aaron's founder Titan sort of DNA interacted with the royal DNA and then unlock this ability for a brief amount of time. So that's really cool. He turned this reveal that I was like, why did you do that, into something that really made sense and was clearly very thought out, which is impressive. And then at the end of chapter 89, you get this thing of the owl, Aaron Kruger, which is really funny, by the way, because there's a screenwriter named Aaron Kruger with an H-E-H-R-E-N, where every time I heard his name, I thought, oh, it's, Aaron Yeager. And then there's actually an Aaron Kruger in the manga. And he says at the end of chapter 89, he mentions Mikasa and Armin, and he's like, wow, whose memories are those that I'm thinking of right now? So there's some kind of timey-wimey stuff going on. And then, you can look back in some of the first chapter. A few pages in, Aaron wakes up from a dream where Mikasa says, see you later, Aaron, and she has longer hair. And he goes, wow, Mikasa, I just woke up from a dream. It felt so long, and your hair was long in it. And it's like what kind of long game is this guy playing? This guy's a fucking madman. Let me mention, this is turning out to be a lot longer than I thought. There's like a title drop in Attack on Titan. Like, this dude, Isayama, is like operating on like a whole other level where like he calls this manga Attack on Titan. And then the freaking Titan that Aaron turns into, like 7 years into the manga, they reveal that this Titan is called the Attack Titan. I think in Japanese this makes even more sense, where the title is Shingeki no Kyojin, which is sort of like the advancing of the Titan. It's like something like that. So, like, I think in Japanese, the name of that Titan might actually be the specific word Shingeki no Kyojin, where in America they had to remove the on for it to make sense, which is so weird. Once again, like, how long has he been thinking of this stuff? Very impressive. And it's clear that there's more to be revealed. I think when he starts revealing what they find in the basement, I was expecting to finally learn where the Titans come from. We do not learn that. We learned a bunch of other stuff. But we do not learn where the Titans come from. So I do want to give props to Isayama for just his storytelling and how he does twists. And they're very good. People act like there were no reveals in between for a long time before the basement reveals. But that's not true. We had a bunch of reveals back in the rock cave, when they were going to sacrifice, when they were going to have Historia eat Eren. I guess for monthly readers, this must have been tough because it was a lot of chapters in between that and the basement. Reading it the way I'm reading it is great. Some of those reveals are a bit weird. It did take me off guard how the reveals of the Marleyans kind of made it so that the Titans themselves aren't much of a threat anymore. And indeed, in chapter 90, they go out and just kind of kill the rest of the Titans. They're like, oh yeah, it turned out we killed a lot of them with the guillotine, and then we just went out and killed the rest, and we're all good. So it's like, oh, no, that was easy. And that's kind of disappointing. And I've heard other people say that, but it's very clear what Isayama is doing. Is that he's replacing that overarching mysterious horror fear of these Titans that no one knows about with a very real fear of human hatred and racism. Something that really exists, and just kind of annihilation by the weapons of war, which will no doubt involve Titans as well. And there's this moment in chapter 90, which was really kind of a sad moment. Where some people I was looking at discussion threads for this chapter. Some people didn't seem to understand. There's a moment where Historia touches Eren. I forget where she touched him to put the medal on him for like a medal of honor. And he has this vision of his father asking Frida Rice to control the Titans and escape the walls. And she, her eyes turn to this sort of like brainwashed, how we saw the will of the founder Titan. Brainwashed sort of where they're brainwashed not to leave because of presumably this fear that the founder Titan has. And you see the same fear in Eren's eyes in that moment. And it's not, he hasn't been brainwashed. And that's, I think, what's really interesting about it. So it's a very cool moment because it shows that, he hasn't been brainwashed, but the fear is now they are all the same. Just because this freedom that he strove for has now kind of been taken away from him. They get to the beach at the end of chapter 90. There's a time skip of, I think, some months, and they finally get to that beach, and it's sort of kind of a sobering moment. It's not as good as you wanted it to be, and that's totally intentional. Once again, some people on the chapter thread, I think, didn't get that it was supposed to be kind of dark, and they were like, "Yay, they got to the beach," which is kind of funny. But the first thing that Eren says once they get there is he says, if we kill all these enemies on the other side of the ocean, then will we be free? Which is like, you're talking about killing people. And this is supposed to be a triumphant moment. So absolutely, that's supposed to be a sort of disturbing, sobering moment. So props to Isayama for that. So let me now get into the other stuff about Attack on Titan that I found out. First, I will say I wrote some notes here. A couple more things, by the way, that the plot armor for characters is a bit annoying. There's definitely needs to be a few more injuries. I'm glad that Irvin at least did die. And do we need to kill Marlowe? He was a cool guy. I liked him. R.I.P. And I will say the dialogue before I get into what I was saying. The dialogue in the manga is super good. I'm sure that this has something to do with Isayama. I think it also has something to do with the people working at Kodansha who translate the manga. I had a lot of problems with them for how they handled the release of Makoto Raiku's manga Animal That manga's over now after many years, and I think I'll let it go. So props to their translators. I loved how that dude Flock, whatever his name was laying into the main heroes in chapter 90, which is a really cool moment just to show like, oh, this is what the point of this guy is. He's kind of to show like, you guys are kind of conceited. It was almost like one of those moments in Community where like they kind of they kind of call out how like the main characters are like, they consider themselves the main characters, and like everybody's like, why are you so important? It was like one of those moments. Okay, so let's get into it. When I was catching up on Attack on Titan, I heard some stuff about people saying Attack on Titan's anti-Semitic. I was like, whoa. It's like, what? Attack on Titan is hateful towards Jews. Whoa. Huh? Because I am technically Jewish. My mom's Jewish. I have a lot of sympathy for the Jewish people. So this really took me by surprise. And I couldn't comment on it because I hadn't gotten to the part that people were talking about. So I had to wait until I got to it. Because I was reading a chapter a week for a while, just to stretch it out, just because so I could make those volumes that I do have last as long as possible. And I finally did get to the part, and then I could look at it and comment on it. And I just want to say I don't get it. I don't see how this manga is anti-Semitic. I, in fact, think it's kind of crazy that anyone thinks it is. I looked at a Twitter thread about it, and I have to say I still don't want to Google too much about it because I know I think the main article that sort of goes into it is written pretty recently. So I don't know what else there is in the future in this manga. I don't know if there's anything else that makes it seem a little more hateful than it does now. But I think most of the things people are complaining about come from like chapter 87 and 88. And I finally got to those parts, and there was a Twitter thread that I saw where everyone really took this like I would say hook, line, and sinker, like this line about like this manga being hateful because of the things that are in these chapters. I do not get it. There are series that have Holocaust allegories and symbolism. Full Metal Alchemist is a big one. There's a genocide in Full Metal Alchemist. The country in Full Metal Alchemist is based on Germany. When I brought this up to my friend, there was a series that he mentioned, Tanya and the saga of Tanya the Evil, which is like the army in that is like very Nazi-esque. And there's so many manga. There's a lot of manga that do this. I mean, there's manga that have Nazi characters. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But yet Attack on Titan is the one that is sympathetic to Nazis because it has Nazis in it. I so don't get that. I mean, especially reading this, you know, the thing that just so clearly stuck out to me was the clear logic that the race that is analogous to the Jews, the Indians, are all the good guys except for Mikasa and Levi, which doesn't really matter. And all the bad guys are the Nazi race. Once again, not all of them. In fact, a lot of the people that we've been interacting with as the enemy Titans are also Indians. But the Nazi race are almost only ever shown to be bad, which is like that should be the end of the conversation, the way I see it. I don't see why it's not. I kind of almost had built this dialogue in my head about sort of like, how do you talk to a person? I don't even understand how you talk to a person that thinks this, because it's like this, like, I don't know how you argue this, because like the moment, you know, someone who says Attack on Titan is anti-Semitic might bring up something like, I did write some notes here. Like I said, someone says that the Jewish race, the Indians, are said to have ruled the world in the past and engaged in ethnic cleansing, which is similar to Jewish conspiracy theories, which it is. And then it's like, well, the moment after they say that, they have to go, oh, but there is a character who says that history is probably untrue. So, which he does. Aaron Kruger says it. That's probably not true. And he says the rumors about us doing good things for the world probably aren't totally true either. Which to me is like, that's I don't find that hateful. I don't really think that's, I mean, he just said it's not true. So the conspiracy stuff probably isn't true. So there's that point done. And then like right after that, you get this whole scene with Amir, who it's like, hello, like we have a very well-loved character in Attack on Titan, okay, who is confirmed in that scene to be LGBT, which probably should be a big deal. I haven't heard much about that. I'm sure people will be excited when it's mentioned in the anime. And we see her being stoned by Nazis. And like, so Isayama knows people love Amir. He knows people are going to love her even more once he reveals that she's a lesbian. And he has the Nazis stone her. And yet people think that this guy is sympathetic to Nazis. Like, can someone explain? Like, I guess I don't want someone to explain it to me because that might involve spoilers. But like, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I don't think Isayama's hateful. I think the only thing we know about Isayama is that he is into Japan's military. As a lot of manga authors are, he based a character, Dot Pixis, off of a Japanese military general, who I guess was historically did some pretty bad stuff in Korea. As far as I know, Isayama never wrote anything derogatory towards Koreans. I looked it up. I didn't see that he did. And as far as I know, we don't know what he's like. I think a lot of Japanese people, a lot of manga authors are pretty army obsessed, kind of nationalistic, in that way, patriotic, jingoist, whatever you want to call it. I don't really think that's evidence of hatred in and of itself. And then there's the bullshit, which I think was in this Twitter post about the Titans look like Jewish caricatures, which, like, okay, they do if you totally refuse to believe the explanation that Isayama has provided since extremely early on in the series about how the Titans were inspired by a drunk guy who was so drunk that he couldn't communicate, which makes a lot of sense because drunk people often have, weird facial expressions and they can't fully talk. So, total bunk, I'm just going to say, on the anti-Semitism front. No evidence that Isayama is hateful. No evidence that Attack on Titan is quote-unquote Holocaust fan fiction, as one Twitter user described it. And if there is evidence, I guess I'm going to have to wait and see, which I will. And I'll provide an update when that happens. So those are my Attack on Titan thoughts. That lasted a lot longer than my original video was going to be, but I think I also phrased things a lot better. I think this mic kind of helped me in a way. I think having the mic sort of centered me. I did pause a few times. I did mix up some things. But I think that's everything I want to say about it. I looked at the cover of the next volume, volume 23, and it was a really cool cover. Of sort of, here's what the enemy side is like, and you have like all these new characters. So I'm really excited for that because I think that's a great thing to switch to before sort of going on this final phase of the story, which I can only imagine what it's going to be. Here it's ending soon. I don't know when it's going to end. And if you watched all this, thanks for watching. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them. Please do not spoil anything after chapter 90 for me. If you need to look up where chapter 90 ends, it ends right on the beach. Armin holds up a shell. Okay? Please don't spoil anything for me after that. I appreciate it. I'm going to go to bed. So thanks for watching. Have a good night.